There shall be showers of blessing. This is the promise of love. There shall be seasons refreshing, sent from the Savior above. Showers of blessings we need. Mercy drops countless are falling, but for the showers we plead.
Luke chapter 24, verses 36 through 48. Jesus appears to the disciples. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I, myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still did not believe it, because of joy and amazement, he asked them, "Do you have anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He said to them, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." Then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. He told them, "This is what is written. The Christ will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance and forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things."
Resurrection has to do with justice. Now we have three kinds of justice in our culture. We have redistribution, restitution, and retribution. Redistribution. That's when you do the Robin Hood thing. You take from the rich and you give to the poor, because everybody should have access to the good of this world. The second type of justice is restitution, and we all know this is important. We know that we are responsible. And when it's our fault that something went wrong and somebody gets hurt, we are responsible. That's why we have collision insurance on our cars, because legally we are liable when we make a mistake. And it's just, we all make mistakes and it's not our fault, but on the other hand, it is our responsibility. And so we do have that liability upon us to help somebody who's been hurt by us. The third type of justice that we have is retribution, because people should pay for hurting others. This is very deep in our consciousness. We believe in retribution. We know that when somebody commits a crime, they should be thrown in jail. Because somehow we have the promise, we feel that promise from retribution, that if we punish the person who did it, we will feel better. We also feel that retribution will scare people into being good. Sad part is twofold. You can't put it back by hurting someone else. We discover that hanging people or executing people for murder, well, it doesn't deter murders. We still have murders. And worse happens, because we put this power in the power of the state, and we're fortunate we have an open government where everybody has somewhat of a voice. But when you put the power in the hands of the powerful for retribution, you wind up with huge inequalities. Look at our prisons. Over half are persons of color. People who have been marginalized from the time they were born. Retribution, and again, in the hands of the powerful, becomes a tool of power. And it's used not just against the poor and the helpless. It's used against those who threaten the power. And that's exactly what happened to Jesus. Jesus, from the perspective of the rulers and the priesthood of Judea, Jesus was a threat. So it was the power of retribution that took Jesus to the cross. And here's the important thing. Jesus went willingly. He accepted the cross. Just as that very night before he was taken and arrested, that very night he accepted the sin of the world upon his shoulders. He accepted retribution, not because he deserved it, but because it was the only way to break the power of evil. Now we've got a lot of noise going on, especially on the left. This is not a political sermon, but we have a lot of noise going on as these revelations of torture and who's responsible come tumbling out of top secret files. And people are demanding that somebody pay. I think Jesus is calling it a different story entirely. Instead of blaming one person or 10 people or 100 people or a bunch of lawyers or whoever, Jesus is calling us to take up our cross. And when we take up our cross, we are called to do the same thing he did to the best of our ability, and that is to accept as our own the sins of the world. I'm just as guilty as those guys and gals who performed the torture, just by being a citizen in this country. We committed these crimes. Take up that cross. Because God has something for us that is greater than any form of justice. We just don't understand it very well. Well, our God is a God of justice and mercy. How God sorts it out, I don't know. But when we accept the responsibility and take that to the cross and let it die with Christ who died for us, we are ready for a resurrection. A new type of justice. Resurrection is not about what we do to get into heaven. It's about what God does to give us new life. And we can trust that.